Hi guys! Today's video is going to be a bit different to what I normally do. Recently, I just came back from a week and a half trip in Germany where we visited Cologne, Bonn, Düsseldorf and some smaller towns as well. And the thing is, I kind of went into it thinking, oh, I know what Germany's going to be like. But it turns out that I really didn't. Some things were cute, some things were cool, but then others were just confusing and surprising. So today, I'm going to share the biggest shocks of Germany, as well as my observations on these things. So grab a drink, get comfy, and let's get into it. Shock number 1. Germany loves 80s music. And I mean really. One of the first things I noticed in the country was the constant presence of 80s music. In the car, on the radio, in restaurants, bars, it was just everywhere. We heard songs like True Faith by New Order, Rock Me Amadeus by Falco, Depeche Mode, Eurythmics, you name it. Synthpop is clearly alive and thriving in Germany. And in a way, this kind of bigger feeling that I had was that Germany is just a bit stuck in the 90s. It's not just the weak Wi-Fi in places, it's architecture and infrastructure, especially in places like Bonn or Düsseldorf. Compared to somewhere like London, it genuinely felt like going back in time. Shock number 2 is cash is still king. For such a wealthy country with a huge GDP, I was shocked how cash-based Germany still is. Some buses are cash only. You go up to the conductor and you buy your ticket to the place where you're going. No card, no Apple Pay, just cash. Some shops, like an antique one where we got a 100-year-old Kuhfell, only operated in cash. So if you're going there for the first time, don't be surprised if card isn't even accepted. And either way, it's probably cheaper to withdraw some euro notes. Shock number 3 was freezing cold tap water everywhere. Whether you're in a restaurant, or in a bar, or at the airport, or at a museum, tap water is ice cold. And to be honest, in any public place that we were in, there wasn't really any warm water for the public to use. So in a way it felt quite mean, especially with the cold weather. Shock number 4 is paid toilets. It's a classic one, but you've got to mention it. Everyone talks about it, and I know it's around in several countries in Europe. But yeah, when you go to Germany, be prepared to pay for going to the loo. In train stations, you'll have these modern gates blocking you until you pay. Not fun if you're desperate. And what was a really annoying surprise, that even in a restaurant, or more so chain, like Burger King, they were charging €1.50 just to go to the bathrooms, even though we paid for a full-blown meal. So I understand it in public places, but what was shocking is that you'll get it in restaurants as well sometimes. Be prepared. Shock number 5 is different prices. So, the weirdest thing we noticed in the grocery store was the price of beer. Here in the UK, in Tesco's or Asda or Waitrose, whatever shop you go to, whether it's a cheaper one or more expensive, beer will be at least £2 or £3. But in Germany, it was about €1 per beer everywhere. I mean, we were only in West Germany, so I can only assume that it's the same in other places. Let me know if it isn't. But overall, that's a big surprise because I never knew beer could be that cheap, even though I don't drink it myself. Shock number 6 is quiet Sundays. On Sundays, Germany shuts down. Normal shops, like ones for clothing or groceries, are shut. And only essentials or leisure places like transport, restaurants, museums, cinemas will be open. So the moral of the story is not to plan shopping on a Sunday. Signs that shout at you. In a way, this links to the stereotype of Germans being strict and demanding, but in a way it's real as well. You've got loads of signs everywhere saying, don't park here, no access, even in front of people's front gardens.
Huh?
And you know, that's a normal thing, but there's normally no please or thank you, just these exclamation marks at the end. Sometimes there's 2 or 3, it's crazy. We even saw a sign like this in a church saying, don't go past the altar rail, with an exclamation mark at the end. They were on almost every sign, and to a person from the UK, it just felt shouty and aggressive. And as a bonus, we also saw this little Japanese garden in the large park in the centre of Bonn. Before you entered it, there were two signs, one in German and one in English, and both of them were about 5 or 6 bullet points of rules before you even go in. And the one that made me laugh the most was, please do not feed the fishes. They receive adequate food daily. And yeah, they remembered to put the word please in there, but the word adequate just felt cold and calculated, as if they weren't even feeding them enough. On the one hand, it kind of feels like they're being patronizing, assuming that you don't think the fish are being fed at all. And on the other hand, the word adequate in there doesn't feel like they're getting enough. And I guess normally in the UK, you'll have a sign like, please don't feed this animal, but it might kind of follow up with a line saying they get plenty of food, as if you wouldn't even want to feed them. But here I just feel sorry for them. Shock number 8. People love correcting each other, and you as well. This stereotype is very real. Park in the wrong spot, someone's gonna point it out. Cross the road too early, someone's gonna point it out as well. Take a photo, someone's gonna come up to you and start screaming at you for no reason. Okay, maybe the last one took it too far, but I did have this experience where I took a picture of some Christmas decorations and some lady just started shouting at me in German. I didn't know what I did wrong. So even if you're not really doing anything wrong, be prepared for finger waving, a patronizing tone, and full-on correction mode. Number 9. A car museum where you can buy cars. We went to the classic remise in Düsseldorf, which was recommended as one of the best attractions in the area. And as I love classic cars, we had to go there. Online, it was a bit unclear whether it was an exhibition or a museum, but the entry was free and there were 300 cars on display. And the biggest surprise was, you can actually buy most of the cars, and they weren't just classic cars from the 50s and 60s, you had high-performance modern cars there as well. It was very different to places in the UK like the British Motor Museum, where it feels more static and educational, and it's very expensive to get in. And another thing that's cool is because people buy those cars and they acquire new ones, the exhibition changes, so it's cool to revisit if you're there every now and again. This was a really nice place. And if you love German cars, you're really in heaven. There's so many Mercedes cars and about 10 or 15 SLs from the 50s and 60s. They were just spammed everywhere, and because it's one of my favourite car designs, it was epic to see. And even if German cars aren't your thing, there's also some British classics like an Aston Martin DB5, just like the one from James Bond. Shock number 10. Crosswalks are intense. Jaywalking in Germany isn't just illegal, it's highly frowned upon by people around you. At crossings there's no button, just this weird panel, which I wasn't sure whether you had to stroke it or tap it or do something, it was just weird. And after you somehow get it to register you, you wait for a really long time until this loud, jarring pecking sound starts sounding. And of course, I totally understand that that's to make it more accessible for more people, but they could have chosen a better noise because it's just plain irritating. And you might ask, well, what's shocking in this? Crosswalks are different in every country. Well, we saw something really weird while we were there, and that was this situation where a man walked on the crossing early when the red man was still on, and he was just about to finish crossing the road. There weren't any cars in the distance apart from one, and that one car just accelerated so much, started holding the horn, and it literally looked like he wanted to run him over. The man jumped forward so much out of fright that he dropped his money. I've just never seen this level of hostility in the UK. So even though it's tedious, just wait for the green man to appear to avoid not only a fine, but angry people around you. One more thing I'll add about this is that the crosswalk system makes walking around and driving feel really slow. When you're walking, you don't see any cars, you think, okay, I'll just cross the road. No, you can't, because of the situation I just told you about. And when you're driving as well, you really feel the crosswalks, because often you'll just be pausing and there isn't anyone walking. Shock number 11 is the complicated and expensive public transport system. S-Bahn, U-Bahn, Deutsche Bahn, National Rails, Flixtrain. Planning travel felt very tedious and overwhelming. An example of this includes our trip from Bonn to Düsseldorf, which was only 36 miles, about 50 kilometers, and the price for a one-way ticket for one person was between 20 and 40 euros. And that was the case unless you booked it early. And when I say early, I mean 3 months early. And that just felt insane to me because 3 months before, I didn't even know I was going to Germany, let alone on a train from Bonn to Düsseldorf. It felt like taking advantage of people who needed to urgently travel and didn't know the system. Thankfully, Flixtrain saved us, but overall, it just felt confusing and unpredictable. Shock number 12 is poor digital infrastructure and German translations. Sometimes navigating around systems with limited German is very difficult. A lot of museums only had partial English translations, which made the experience feel half done. And also, we had a funny situation in Cologne main station when trying to buy train tickets. We would buy this machine with a touchscreen, which lets you choose the language you want to operate in. So we chose English, and the touchscreen was just super slow, and the language was still in German for any thing or place you wanted to select. And at the end, payment failed a couple of times. After a couple of these tries, and just acknowledging that it was pointless to use the English version, we clicked on the German version, and all of a sudden, everything started working perfectly. We could even pay at the end. So in a busy train station, next to one of the biggest attractions in the country, it just felt unacceptable. Make sure when you go to Germany that you've got mobile data and you've got a translate app on your phone, so you can just take a picture and translate things instantly. Shock number 13, confusing and controlling house rules. This was just my experience, but it was still very surprising. Over a few days, we stayed at my uncle's mum's house, and she's over 80 years old, so I expected it to be relatively polite and traditional, but I didn't think that there would be this many unspoken rules, such as don't look in the fridge without permission, don't wake up too early, before 8 AM, don't wake up too late, after 8:30. Don't use your phone too much. You must eat everything, no matter whether the food tastes good or bad, or whether you like it or not, even if it tastes a bit old. And another funny thing we noticed was that the family walks the dog 4 times a day. And that wasn't just something our family did. It kind of linked to this German rule, or law should I say, called Hundesverordnung. And what that means for dog owners is that they're expected to walk their dog about twice a day for an hour total. Compared to the UK, this just felt very controlling and rigid. Shock number 14 is that Germans don't speak English as well as one might expect. Even though it's not really polite to go to another country and say, oh, I expect everyone to speak English. Many people and sites on the internet often say that Germany is one of the countries that learns English best and the most people know it. So you might assume that that might actually be the case. In reality, most people only spoke very basic English, using very rudimentary vocabulary. At hotels and restaurants, we were normally just pointing to what we wanted. And at the train station, when we approached the information desk to find out what platform a train was leaving from, this guy just went, and we just stared blankly, going, huh? What? Sorry, excuse me. And then he just replied, Eins. We also went to see The Last Ship musical in Koblenz, and to our surprise, the songs were meant to be in English. So we thought we'd actually be able to understand some parts. But in the end, the lyrics were very hard to understand, and it kind of sounded like they started singing in English, but overall it just morphed into this kind of German sounding language. So in the end, I understood more from the subtitles than the actual singing, and the subtitles were in German. I only studied German for GCSE, so yeah, that was a bit of a surprise. Shock number 15, and I think this was the biggest shock, and it was airport hostility and inefficiency. We were traveling from Cologne Bonn airport, and it was just a nightmare. On arrival, things weren't that bad, but initially we were surprised by it was so empty. I mean, we supposed it was December, so there weren't that many tourists coming. we just kind of carried on. But then we go and try to collect our luggage and we end up waiting an hour for it. So that was just surprisingly slow. And then things got even worse on the way back. Our flight was meant to be at 5:15 p.m, but we really didn't have anything to do in Cologne, so we came at about 12 and hanged around at the McDonald's for a while till about 3 p.m. Afterwards, we went through security, everything seemed more or less smooth, but then at duty free, there literally weren't any staff working around, so we ended up waiting about 15 to 20 minutes at one counter where there was literally just no one there, and at the end, a lady from the other side of the hall called us to the perfume shop to pay for something completely different. Out of 4 tills, there was only one that was operational. And the same thing goes for bathrooms. Even though there were about 6, only one seemed to be working or kind of open, and it didn't lock. So you couldn't use one at all there. And another few things that happened were the gate was changed without any given notice, and at the end there was a hidden extra security checkpoint. So overall the signage was really poor. When we reached that security area, it suddenly became really hot there, and there were only about 10 to 15 people in front of us, and that took 40 minutes to get through. Security guards were slow, dismissive, and eventually the queue started growing a lot because of how slow they were, and people were rushing up saying that the gate was closing for their plane. All they said was, "Come earlier." And at some point, when about 5 people had come running, they were saying, "Go around to some other place." During that time, someone also fainted, so both of the security guards that were working on checking people were completely focused on the lady that had fainted. And the reason that she likely fainted was because they were so slow and it was so hot in there. We arrived at the gate only 15 minutes before the plane was actually meant to depart, and we got on as if everything was normal, and then suddenly another thing happens. They need to de-ice the plane. And you know what? That's understandable. These things need to be done. But instead of taking 10 or 15 minutes like they said, it took 45. And you know what? That would have been fine if we'd just flown after that. But that wasn't the case. The plane was just static for another 5 minutes and then slowly came over to the runway. And then we got another message. After spending 45 minutes de-icing the plane, they spent another hour de-icing the runway. I don't know why no one would have thought that while they're de-icing the plane, they could have done the runway to make things smoother, but I don't think they want things to be smooth at that airport. In the end, prep time was much longer than the flight itself, and for a laugh, when we got home, we checked Trustpilot to see what people were saying about the airport, and it was all just the same. Overall, it received a 1.5 out of 5-star rating, and most people said that if there were a 0-star rating, they would give it that. So yeah, I hope other airports in Germany aren't like this, even though I've heard bad things about Frankfurt, so at least try to avoid this one if you're traveling there. Or don't come 2 hours early, don't come 3 hours early, come 4 hours early, and check in really early, especially if it's busy. Well, that was a long point, but now it's shock 16, and that's racism and double standards. This was the most upsetting point. I'm a Polish person, born and bred in the UK, and I've just lived here my whole life, so I can speak Polish relatively okay, and English as well. And the weird thing we noticed was that when we spoke in Polish, we got frowns and colder treatment. But when we spoke in English, we got smiles and friendliness all around. So we quickly noticed this and kind of just avoided speaking Polish, which felt wrong because you should be able to choose what language you speak in, especially if you're a tourist, without any consequences. We also encountered this crazy situation in TK Maxx where, you know, you've got these things on sale or just extra stuff while you're in a queue. So we were standing in the queue to buy something, and this German woman in front of us started shouting at and kind of shaking and rattling this Muslim woman who was standing there with her kids just because they were blocking the queue while they were viewing some items on the side. And this kind of links into that point where Germans want to correct other people and shout at them if they're doing something wrong sometimes. But I've just never seen that level of aggression in UK or anywhere really. So yeah, those are my biggest shocks in Germany. Some of them were small things that you could kind of expect, but others were really weird and disturbing, as you could think. I'm not really a fan of stereotypes, and I don't think that's the right way to look at other people, especially when going on a holiday. But unfortunately in Germany, you'll just see them in your face all the time, or at least that was my experience. We did also meet a lot of nice and normal people, but yeah, there were some negative surprises. And now I'm really curious to hear from you. Have you ever been to Germany? And if so, did you experience the same shocks that I did? Or maybe there are more things you'd want to add to the list? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!